Reeves is expected to raise the headline rate of income tax for the first time in 50 years. We're now aware of this. She is about to give an interview. Curiously, in fact, she's giving it right now to the BBC. So we'll bring you any salient headlines from that. Funny, isn't it? Why are you talking to the BBC? It's always rather extraordinary when that happens. It's a move which risks breaking Labour's manifesto promise not to, of course, do anything with those basic income tax, VAT, national insurance. She also plans to raise dividend tax, which could put people off investing and hit pensioners who rely on extra incomes from shares. Martin Beck, Chief Economist at WPI Strategy, joins us now on this one. Martin, good afternoon to you. Look, I know it's not easy, and I don't envy being a Chancellor, and we can all be armchair Chancellors, but there are certain, you'd like to think there are certain fundamentals in this and things that I always thought everybody knew, that if you tax too much, then you scare people off investing or entrepreneurs or starting business. It's that little bit there at the end that I just mentioned that seems to be, well, there's a perception at the very least, let's be fair, we haven't heard the budget yet, it seems to be eluding this government at the moment.
I think the Chancellor finds herself in a difficult position. I mean, as you mentioned, the Labour Party promised in the election not to raise income tax or national insurance contributions or VAT, but the reality for the Chancellor is that the public finances have deteriorated a lot in the last year. And you remember the speech Rachel Reeves gave last week. She gave a whole litany of reasons as to why.
Yep.
Look, she's now on course to not meet her fiscal rules, and the scale of the deterioration means she's got to find a lot of money to meet those rules and build up some kind of buffer of resilience. And if you think about filling a big fiscal hole, the obvious targets are the three big taxes, which are VAT, national insurance, or income tax, and which income tax is the largest, raises the most money.
Should they, I mean, would it help or would it just spook the markets in some respect if a Chancellor just went, look, we're absolutely knackered here, and, you know, short-termism plays no part in economic strategy. We've got to look ahead. So top rate of tax is going to be 60p. It's as simple as that. Top rate, that is. So over, I don't know, 200 grand a year or something, you're going to pay 60p. I mean, it might not be everybody's cup of tea. It would be painful for many. Would that not be the more honest way of doing this? Or are there reasons why those that are fiscally in charge can't go there?
I think that the problem with doing it on the top rate is that you might not raise much money because the people who earn the most generally are the most mobile. They probably find it easiest to leave the country. If you raise the basic rate or the higher rate of income tax, you're levying a higher tax on tens of millions of people, most of whom can't. They've got to carry on working. They can't just leave their jobs. They can't emigrate to Dubai. So in a way, it's a more reliable way of raising money. You know pretty much exactly how much you're going to generate from increasing those income tax rates.
So it's more of a, yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, £200,000, I know that's a lot of money. It's many times multiplied of the average wage, but there's lots of people that do earn that money. I mean, the average solicitor might earn it, a doctor might earn it, who wouldn't be legging it for the hills or Dubai or anywhere. But what you're saying there, Martin, is that actually if you put it somewhere sort of in the middle, then you've got more of a certainty. You can at least know that that money is almost guaranteed to come in.
That's right, and you're also spreading the burden amongst a much bigger number of people.
Yeah.
You know, there's 30 million people in work in the UK. If you increase the tax on all of them, it's probably not going to hit any one individual too hard. Whereas if you try and focus the tax rises on a subset of that group, then you run the risk of sort of unintended consequences. Yeah,
I mean, people are always pointing to Scandinavia, aren't they? And I always find that rather interesting. I'm pretty sure if you go to Denmark or Sweden or something and, you know, say did a survey on the street, is everything tickety-boo? They'd probably go, no, it's bloody awful around here. We've got terrible things going on. The economy's in the slumps, and, you know, this idea that everyone's sort of living in a hammock and everything's free and there's a hospital at the end of every single road. I mean, this is nonsense, but they do charge people more taxation. That is true.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, income tax is actually relatively low in the UK, taxes on workers. I mean, our tax burden's around the average for developed economies, but the average worker in the UK pays a relatively small share of their income in tax. And that, I guess that creates an additional argument for the government to say, well, we've got to raise money from somewhere, so let's focus it on wage earners and workers. Yeah.
Is there a kind of magic tax out there, Martin, somewhere that people like yourself and economists that think about this stuff and play with numbers and spreadsheets and abacuses or abaci all day long? I'm sure you haven't really got one of those, but you take my point. Is there a kind of like, why don't chancellors just do this? Is there one of those moments in your world?
What we really want to do, we want to reduce taxes on effort and work. We want to encourage people to work as hard as possible. So there is an economic argument which says that we should shift the tax burden from effort and work to consumption.
Yeah.
So we should cut income tax and put up VAT. The trouble with that is that putting VAT up puts prices up. It makes the Bank of England's life a bit harder in terms of cutting interest rates. And there's a distributional argument, and if you put it more of the tax burden onto VAT and less on income tax, you're hitting the poor harder than the rich. So I guess you've got to focus on other things other than just economics, also fairness and equity and so on.
Yeah, fair point. Martin, great to have you on. Thank you. We'll watch with interest in the next couple of weeks when we hear that budget. Rachel Reeves, currently live, giving an interview to an organisation called the BBC. Remember them? They used to be, that lot. Still around, apparently. She's doing an interview with them. We'll bring you any headlines that come from that. That was Martin Beck, you just heard there, Chief Economist at WPI Strategy. I know it's not easy, and obviously if you're skint, my fear of this country is that we are going to be more and more skint, not like this budget isn't going to somehow solve some monumental economic block that has got in the way of everything, and suddenly Rachel Reeves is going to do this. She's going to say it's not going to be popular, but I'm going to implement these tax rises. But look, a year down the line, everything will be amazing. I sense that a year down the line we'll be in the same position. It feels like that, right? Everything feels like that. There's no great sense of entrepreneurial input and exciting things on the horizon. And you can throw cost of living and price of fuel and energy and all that stuff into it as well. Back to your